Most importantly, the audio is on. Discuss experimental probability and contrast theoretical and experimental probability. 12.91 or 12.91. If the theoretical probability is unknown or too complicated to calculate, it can be estimated by an experimental probability. Experimental probability, also called empirical probability, is an estimate of the likelihood of a certain outcome based on repeated experiments or collected data. Inductive reasoning. In other words, while theoretical probability is based on what should happen, experimental probability is based on what has happened. Deductive reasoning. Experimental probability is calculated in the same way as theoretical, except that actual outcomes are used instead of possible outcomes. The more experiments performed or data points gathered, the better the estimate should be. Theoretical and experimental probability do not always line up with one another. Theoretical probability says that out of 20 coins to possess 10 should be 10 possibilities, 10 should be heads. However, if we were actually to toss 20 coins, we might actually record just 5 heads. This doesn't mean that our theoretical probability is incorrect. It just means that the particular experiment that has had resulted were different from what was predicted. A practical application of empirical probability is that the insurance industry there are no set functions that define lifespan, health, or safety. Insurance companies look at the factors from hundreds of thousands of individuals to find patterns that they then use to set the formulas for insurance premiums. That's why mine's so they're basically dealing with infinite and unreasonable data. Damn. Anyways, that's the end of discuss experimental probability and contrast theoretical and experimental probability. 12.91 or 12.91.